This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, Show 42.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba. Ramsey didn't even know who made it to the Super Bowl this year.
Hello, SE Nation, and welcome to Show 42. If this is the first time you guys are listening, my name is Ramsey Majaba, and I'm a sales engineer out of Ottawa, Canada. My goal with this podcast and website is to provide a resource for sales engineers by sales engineers so we can all learn and grow together. Quick tip of the week, join the book club. It is free, and as soon as you join the book club, you are eligible to join the book club forum as well. And that's where we can review, recommend, or simply just discuss books that help sales engineers. To join the book club, go to wethesalesengineers.com/book club. And again, this is show number 42. All the links that we discussed today can be found at wethesalesengineers.com/show 42. In the show, I actually say it's 41, but I was wrong. It's 42. Today's interview is with Brian Geery, who is also a member of the book club, by the way. Brian owns his own company, Sales NV, and he focuses on helping people with their demos. We talk a lot about demos today, as well as working with account managers to make the demo even better. And we go through the 5 steps of the great demo. So without further ado, here's Brian. Good morning, Brian. How are you today?
Well, thank you.
First off, let me start by thanking you for coming on so early to record this interview. I'm happy you're on, and I've been looking through your LinkedIn, and I've noticed that you've been doing that same thing, or at least within the same company, since 1991. According to your LinkedIn.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes.
And it's like I can't even imagine. So, do you mind letting the folks know which company that is and what you do specifically?
Sure. Sales Envy is the name of the company. The letter N, the letter V is how it's spelled, but it's envy, like envious, because we're a sales consulting firm. We work with software companies specifically, and we help sales professionals fine-tune their demonstrations so that their demo-to-close ratio improves. And that's it in a nutshell. That's what we've been doing for years, watching software demonstrations, learning what works, cross-pollinating those ideas, identifying areas that need some fine-tuning, and providing coaching and feedback to help those demonstrations become even more persuasive and compelling.
So how did you get that gig in the end?
How did I get this?
Well, I know it's your company, but how did you, why did you start it? How did you even think about starting it?
Excuse me. Good question. Career default. It's funny, if you ask a lot of people about how they became, whoever they are, I have a friend who's a radiologist. And his backstory is he became a radiologist because the girl he was dating when he was in med school was interested in radiology. So it was more of a default than a choice. My default was, and the real story was, I was a tractor-trailer operator. Early in my career, I didn't like it at all. I wanted to do something else. Excuse me. And a girl I was dating at the time worked as a software programmer. And we went to dinner with her bosses, a husband and wife team, David and Joanne. And during dinner, Joanne said, you'd be good in sales. And I said, wow, why don't you hire me? And she said, okay. And that's how I got into software sales. So it was a lucky career default. And I loved it, and I never looked back. And I was fortunate. I had some really amazing mentors. I did have some innate talent as well. But I just learned over the years. Sold software as a salesperson, then as a sales manager at a different company, then a branch manager. And then one day, and this is also the real story, the backstory, I had been on a club trip to Maui, President's Club, for achieving quota. And to this day, I'm not sure, Ramsey, it could have been the rum punch, it could have been the hot sun, but I decided I could quit my job and sell what I had learned. And that's what I did. I came back from the club trip and started as a consultant. I had my phone, I had my kitchen table, and that was about the extent of my business plan. And that's really how it all started. So initially it was sales training, did a lot of general consulting on compensation and territory structure and new hire onboarding. But over time, I narrowed it down to my passion. I just love selling software, and I think that the demonstration, it's the pinnacle of the sales process. It's where it all happens. Like it's the make it or break it moment. You know, it's kind of like in real estate. When you're showing the house, that's when the buyer decides I want to buy or not buy. If you're selling boats, it would be the same thing in software. It really, the sale takes place at the demonstration. So a long answer to your question, but that's kind of the backstory on how Sales Envy got to where it is and how I got to where I am.
That's perfect, because you answered a bunch of my questions that I have, so now I have to think of new questions. Thank you very much. So when you decided to actually branch off, was it an easy decision? Was a lot of alcohol involved?
I combined the rum punch and the hot sun, but it made sense. So yes, it was an easy decision. I think that often happens with people. You just hit a point in your career where whatever you're doing, you realize it's like trying to do something else. And that's just kind of what happened. So it's hard to to have clarity on the moment itself, but ultimately it was fairly easy to say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go and sell what I've learned.
So when it's time, it's time. The reason I was asking is a lot of sales engineers, and maybe even salespeople, I don't know, they get to the point in their career where they don't know what's next, especially for sales engineers. They either have to go into sales or they just stay as sales engineers for the rest of their careers, because pretty much nothing else is as good as being a sales engineer. So I was curious to see how you got from going from sales to actually owning your own business, which is, some people would love to do that. Some people would hate doing that. They like the cushion of having a check coming in every month.
Oh yeah, and I respect that, and honestly, I do miss it. There's absolutely something very comforting and safe about knowing you're going to get a paycheck. And yeah, when you start your own business, you don't get a paycheck unless you get a paying client, and you don't always have paying clients, especially in the early days. But I don't know. To me, being a sales engineer, so I've always been the salesperson, and I've worked with sales engineers many times over the years, but I've never been the person in the sales engineering role. But it's such an important role. I mean, really, in a lot of software companies, the salesperson simply can't achieve their job. They can't do their job.
And we're back. Well, so welcome to Canada. I just had a power surge and everything went to blank. So this is a real life demo, as Brian was mentioning. And now we're back, and we don't remember where we left off. So let's start with this. So I think you were saying that you've worked with a lot of sales engineers in your career. And
yes, I have.
I've worked with a few account managers, not a lot, but usually when we say sales team, it's a sales manager and a SE. what in your mind makes a good sales team?
Yeah, that's a great question. They really know each other's role in the process. They respect it. There's a level of trust. Each other feels they have each other's back, like I got you covered. And it's something that happens over time. It takes, months or perhaps a year for, in my mind anyway, for that relationship to really gel into just that winning team. And ultimately the prospect feels it. It's like they can just tell that, wow, this team, these guys are good. And I say guys in general, it could be guys, girls, whatever. It's just that there's a relationship that is obvious to the prospect that it's a good quality relationship.
You mentioned it takes maybe a year, but what is the sales engineer and the sales guy, what are they doing in that year to actually build that trust and like create that, mesh between them to know what they're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're strategizing sales opportunities. They're talking about the purchasing team members that they've spoken with, what they've learned, who they still need to speak with, what the primary business challenges are that the prospect has, how they're going to demonstrate the software to really address and solve those challenges. So it's just over time, as you work sales opportunities together, then the relationship just kind of begins to gel. So it's just something that it takes some time, and it's okay. People need to recognize that. You don't just get on a bike and ride initially. You got to go through a little bit of a training process, and it's similar to that.
The big thing that I find is being able to talk to each other usually helps. I had a new sales manager join my team like a couple years after I've been working as a sales engineer. And he came in, he was open for conversations, he was open for learning, and that's not something I see every day with salespeople, or even SEs, to be honest. But I think that's just being open and allowing each other to talk to each other. That's how we can build trust, at least in my opinion.
Oh, I would agree. It's funny, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? but it is. There's lots of situations where that just doesn't seem to take place.
Well, it's easier said than done, because I have no authority over my sales guy, and he has no authority over me, as in I didn't report to him directly. He could ask me to do things, but the way he'd ask me to do things, it's either a way that I would appreciate or a way I would hate. And, if I hate it, will I tell him about it right away, or will I just bite my lip and then explode a couple months down the road?
Yeah, that's interesting. And to me, in my estimation, you've got to communicate regularly and often. And if the salesperson is not communicating in a way that works for you, you have to address it. Yeah, which kind of gets into something before this call that we were talking about, is how can the SE improve pre-demonstration planning, like work with their salesperson to make sure that everything the SE needs to know, he or she knows before the demonstration starts. Because a lot of salespeople will be like, hey, getting on a plane, I'm not going to have time to talk to you, but it's just a standard demo. Let's just do it.
I love those.
And you're the SE going, well, wait, no, there is no such thing as a, quote, just a standard demo. You're sitting there saying, well, who's going to be on the call? What do you learn in discovery? What's their number one challenge? Do we have to address the business case on this call, or is it all technical? Is it there's so much that we have to know.
So let me ask you this before we start, because I want to get into this topic. I want to dig deep into this topic. What is the account manager's role in a demo?
That's a very good question, and I think every sales team really needs to clearly define that. My estimation, my feeling is the account manager, and I say the salesperson and the sales engineer, but the account manager has to do the discovery work before a demonstration. They have to find out all kinds of things about why the prospect is interested in new software in the first place. To me, often deals are won or lost in discovery, because if you execute a good discovery before the demonstration, then you can knock it out of the park in the demonstration. So the number one thing is discovery work, and then communicating to the SE what was learned in discovery. And there's some products that may be so complex that it's important that the SE is involved in the discovery conversation as well. So there's a little bit of a case-by-case assessment going on there.
I personally,
so I'm sorry. So that's pre-demo. During the demo, it's that teamwork that we were talking about before. The account manager and the SE, gelling and speaking at the right times and communicating back and forth effectively in a manner that really gets the value proposition across.
So in my experience, I always like to be involved in the discovery, mainly because there's a lot of technical stuff, and I know better than the salesperson, and just the nature of my industry, what problems my equipment solve or my products solve, more than the account manager. I don't know what it is like in other domains, but I always enjoy being part of the discovery. For another reason, almost always something gets lost in translation. Whenever I was not part of the discovery call, I got wrong information from the account managers.
Makes sense. And especially, I know now you're selling oscilloscopes, which I was just reading about before this, and spectrum analyzers, so you're getting really technical. And in sales that are of that nature, the SE should absolutely be involved in discovery. So a little bit of it depends on the level of complexity of the software. That makes sense.
And just to be clear, just so people don't have the wrong idea about me, that's a different department within my company. I actually sell test equipment for networking products, like Nokia, Cisco. I sell them test equipment for their, if they want to test OSPF or whatever acronym you want to throw out there. Also some visibility stuff for security. So I'm not really into that oscilloscope stuff, but it's still as complicated, if not more complicated, than just selling the oscilloscopes, and which is why I like to be involved in all sorts of discovery calls.
And it makes sense, yep.
So you did bring up the point of SEs and account managers should be planning better for demos. So how can we do that?
I use the analogy that planes don't crash because pilots use pre-flight checklists. And to me, a pre-demo checklist is one tool that works really well. And that's a list of what do we, account manager SE, need to know before the demonstration. And you may have the must-have and the nice-to-have on your checklist. Every sales situation is going to be a little different, but the idea is just agree on what we should know before a demonstration and what we'd like to know. Maybe we don't always know. So I pulled up an example of a client I worked with recently because they're all a little different. But in this case, I'll read a couple of the things on the checklist. The first one is why is the prospect interested now? And by now, it's like, at this point in time, something caused the prospect to say, man, we could use some new software. Well, what was that? And why now? Like, why didn't they wait 6 months, or why didn't this come up 6 months ago? So just understanding the business driver, the compelling reason, really helps frame for this particular client the rest of the demonstration, like what we're going to show. Another item on their checklist is the purpose of the demonstration. Like, if this demonstration is successful, what will happen next? Like, there's got to be an objective. Because usually when you're selling complex technical things, it's not like they see it and they buy it. There's a purchasing process. So going into the demo, understanding that objective is on the checklist. And I'll pick two more examples on this particular list just to give you the idea. The attendees' personal areas of interest, because in this case, there's often many people on the demonstration. So what the team, sales engineer, salesperson, account manager, as you call them, needs to know on the buyer's side, what do they need to know about? Like, is someone from accounting going to be involved, or operations, or implementation, or whatever? And another example here is customer success stories. Like, how will we talk about the value proposition, and specifically talk about existing customers who are using the software? So we have this one customer that used to be just like you, Ramsey. They had this problem, this challenge, blah, blah, blah. Here's the consequences that they were suffering because of the challenge. Then they purchased our software, and here's what their day in the life is like now. So again, I'm giving a long answer, but the idea is you just have to have an understanding of what's important to know before we go and show our software. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And you mentioned that for every organization it might be different, but those 4 items that you just mentioned should be common across the board, no matter what you're selling. And
yes, that's true in that instance. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you can get, like, this is not, I'm assuming that's not the extent of the checklist. Like, it can get more granular depending on the company that you're selling to or you're actually selling for.
Oh, yeah. Like, I worked with a client that sells molecular modeling software to scientists at universities. So before the demo, that team needed to know, well, are they interested in life and material science predictive analytics? Or are they interested in chemical inventory management? Or maybe it's integrative therapeutics. You know, at a software that sells to software to manage senior living facilities, that checklist was more about, is it the operational and the marketing side, or is it really the whole clinical continuum of management, or the care continuum management? Like, what's important? So yeah, there's I'd call it the standard. You know, why are they interested now? What's the purpose of the demo? Personal areas of interest, business challenges, business case ROI would be common, like in many software. Like, is it worth it? Like, how do we get a return on investment? Competitive positioning statements would be others kind of standard in the demo. But then based on what you're selling, you know, if it's trucking management software, is it more the dispatch side, the routing side, the maintenance side, the compliance side, the HR side? So those are all potentials for your pre-demo checklist. So by the way, if someone was listening to this and they don't have a pre-demo checklist, it's not that complex to create one. It's really just get together as a team and talk about what we really should know before the demo, And then you might have a second list that's what would be really nice to know if we can get it. And then just now you have your checklist and start using it.
So
you'll refine it over time.
To be clear, you're saying there's one checklist of the things that we have to know before we actually go into the meeting, like who's going to be there, and possibly the why they're looking for it now. And then there's another checklist of questions that you're going to ask during the meeting. And then there's a checklist that you would like to have, like, so after the call of what, like, the next steps you want to achieve, something like that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is every sales professional, whether it's on the SE side or the account management side, as a team going into a demo, there should be an agreement as to what we will make sure we understand about this prospect before we show them the software. And in many instances, companies may have, I'll call it the must-have, like we have to know these things or we're not even going to go to demo. And then it sure would be nice to have. So I don't want to make it too complex. The idea is just jot down everything that you should have, that every piece of information you should understand before a demonstration, agree on that, and then don't demo if you don't have it. You get yourself in trouble.
So, all right, well, it is hard not to demo when your account manager is saying that you should demo or we're going to lose this deal, and you're saying, no, we can't demo because we don't have enough information. So how does an SE get his account manager to see the light? And I'm not talking about all account managers, just the few. So how can we get that done?
Yeah, it's so important. It's a sales process. I mean, you have to sell your salespeople on why pre-demo information is so important. Explain how you'll be able to customize the talk track to make it more relevant to the people in the demo. How, if you have this information, you can be much more persuasive and compelling. Like the demonstration will end up much closer to winning than losing with the information. It's understanding what's in it for you, salesperson, as to why this is so important. You know, if you can tie it back to where they are against their quota or sales for the year, so let's just say it's a $50,000 opportunity, and you're saying, and the salesperson's just give a demo. I don't have time to talk to you. Like, you say, do you want to win the deal? Because if you want to win the deal, then I need this information to knock it out of the park for you. So it's tricky, but I call it internal selling. And if as an SE, if you're running into a situation where your salesperson just isn't stepping up to the plate and providing you with the information you need, then I'd go as far as talking to the salesperson's manager. Like, this is about winning deals, So you don't want to go into the battle unprepared.
A colleague of mine actually, like, they would do the discovery, but then the account manager would, like, schedule 3 or 4 demos back to back, which are on different products, different technologies. And he wasn't an experienced SE when he first started. But in the end, he went and talked to his account manager, and he said exactly what you said. Like, do you want to demo or do you want to win the deal? Because they're two different things.
Yeah. Yep.
And that kind of, just asking that question was very effective to make the account manager realize that, okay, it's not just about demoing, there's more to it. A lot of account managers are not aware of what sales engineers need to do, although some of them were SEs in the past, which is weird. But yeah, like, again, we go back to open communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And one idea that just comes to mind is maybe just listing off to the salesperson, look, here, I'm going to your website. I could get into the advanced design system. I can get into the simulation software. I can get into the system view software. I can get into the Genesis microwave synthesis software. but we don't have time for that. So what do you want me to get into? Like, what did you learn in discovery? So yeah, sometimes you have to be pretty direct and straightforward with the account manager to help them understand that, yeah, this is important. You know, it doesn't make sense to demonstrate unless we know this stuff.
Again, I haven't worked with a lot of account managers, but the ones I've worked with, I find if I try to beat around the bush, they will, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, they will not understand what I'm trying to say. But if I am direct and actually send them an email afterwards that this is what we discussed, they tend to understand a little bit better what I'm trying to say. So,
yes. Mm-hmm.
I guess direct is the best way to go. So what makes a good demo? Now that we're transitioning out of getting the account manager to see the light, what makes a good demo?
Yep. So in my book, How to Demonstrate Software So People Buy It, I list 5 elements of an unparalleled demo. And today I'm going to add a 6th that's not in the book. But I'll just list them off real quick, and then we can delve into any ones that you want. So one is you're presenting to all the purchasing team members. 2 is it's in a memorable manner. 3 is how does your software solve the prospect's pressing business challenges? 4 is justifies the cost. Like, why is it worth it? What's the business case? 5 is outperforms any other options. So compared to the status quo or purchasing from a competitor, why is your software better than any other options? And then what I've added since I published the book is, can it be implemented now? So to me, if you have those 6 elements in a demonstration, if you address all 6, then it's going to be an unparalleled demo, or what I like to say, my analogy is instead of a good B movie, it's a blockbuster. You know, and at the end of the demonstration, the prospects look at each other and just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, I guess we should buy. So that's what I think is so critical to all demonstrations.
I do apologize. I was going through a coffee fit again, and I was on mute, and I couldn't hear over the sound of my coughs. Can we list them off again really quickly?
Yes. List off the 5 elements of an unparalleled demo.
Yep, or 6.
So, yep, the 6th one that I've added since. So we present to all the purchasing team members. We present in a memorable manner. I'll come back to that one. How our software solves pressing business challenges. That, by the way, is perhaps the most important. Justifies the cost. In other words, why is it worth it? What's the business case? Outperforms any other options, meaning they could remain status quo or purchase from a competitor. But why should they purchase your software? And then the 6th that I've added is can be implemented now. So it's frustrating if they see it, like it, want it, can afford it, but say, yeah, we don't have the resources to implement now. Those are the 6 elements.
Is that from the customer's end, the implementation, or from the seller's end?
From the customer's end. If as a seller, if you can't implement what you sell, then you've got an operational challenge. Like that to me, that just shouldn't be allowed.
But isn't that
don't sell the software we can't implement? Well, then somebody on the operations side needs to get the implementation team built out.
But isn't that what a lot of salespeople do? They oversell, and then internally try to scramble to get it done.
I think there's 2 things. Overselling would be saying the software can do something that it can't actually do, in my mind. But selling, closing so many opportunities that suddenly the implementation team says, oh, well, we can't, we don't have the resources to implement another customer. then what I'm saying there is that
Okay.
that's an operational challenge that any CEO should just like put to bed. Come on, that's crazy in my
Okay.
mind.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's very disheartening for the account team too to know that they did everything right, except in the back end we can't actually provide that service to the
I
customer.
know. I know. Ugh.
Okay, so let's go back to number one. Present to all purchasing members, or I guess decision makers is another way of
Yeah.
putting it.
Yeah.
What if generally speaking, in my experience, there are multiple tiers of decision makers. There's a technical decision maker, and then there's the people who actually say if they have the money for it or not.
hmm
How would you present
Yep.
to both of them at the same time, knowing that each one's looking at something different? Or would
Yeah.
you do that?
So this is going to be case by case based on the type of software complexity of it. But what I'm promoting is the more we can have everyone in attendance, the better. But like if you're selling a complex business application that works through multiple departments, then you may have multiple demonstrations where you're demonstrating to the finance and accounting team and they're saying that's fine with me, but they don't necessarily care about the technical side of it. So it's a bit case by case, but what I'm saying is before a demonstration, we should know who all the purchasing team members are, what their roles in the purchasing process are, what's important to them. And the more we can do it all at once, the better off. I mean, if you can close a sale in 3 demos versus 6 demos, well, that's huge. So what I'm promoting is try to get everybody that's involved in the purchasing process to attend the demonstrations. Or if it's really unique needs, then you may have several demonstrations. But just try to avoid that situation where the one person says, well, we're interested, so I just want to see a preliminary demo. No, that doesn't get you anywhere.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah. The second one, the memorable manner, you have to remember, if you're the prospect and you're looking at multiple software packages over time, you forget who has what. I mean, you may get in a room together with your colleagues 6 weeks later after you've seen, say, 3 or 4 demonstrations, and one person says, oh, really, I liked ABC software because it had the auto input screens, and the other person says, no, that was XYZ software. Oh, it was? So it becomes one big glob of software in their minds. But if you make your demonstration memorable, then it's much easier for them when they get together and they talk about should we buy from ABC or XYZ, they remember your software.
Can you give an example of one of your clients taking a demo and making it memorable? Like what was so memorable about that demo?
Yeah, sure. I've worked with a client that sells software to manage large, complex investment portfolios. And in this case, what they did is they had a graph of a day in the life of before using the software and after using the software. So they'd actually open the demonstration and say, this is a typical person in your situation when you're not using our software, and you spend all your time here in, say, administrative tasks, and here in doing research, and here. But when you own our software, the whole dynamic changes. You don't have to do administrative tasks because they happen automatically. You don't have to do research because the software serves it up for you. So they had literally a graphical representation of a day in the life of before and after. That was memorable.
So they focused on not the features, they focused on what the solution would actually do for them in terms of saving time and money. Okay.
Excellent summary.
Oh,
But
thank you.
but how do you make it memorable? Another example is a client that sold software to manage wholesale distribution companies, and particularly the counter, where picture, I guess, the Home Depot contractor counter. And this company developed a little role play that showed what it was like to service customers with and without the software. And they actually did like a little skit. It took less than 5 minutes, but man, it was so memorable. It was fun. They did it in a manner that always got a little chuckle.
So, okay, that's kind of they're very brave for doing that. I don't know, like a lot of people would not feel comfortable doing it. A lot of SEs and sales guys, because remember, SEs are engineers; they're not actors.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there something that they can do to actually get better at being either one, risk takers, or two, like, I don't know, improv better, whatever it is?
There's just the short answer: practice. You've got to practice this stuff. To me, every person who sells software, whether it's on the SE side or the account manager side, if you're not practicing the delivery of your demonstration, like recording yourself, playing it back, listening, watching, thinking carefully about what you say, and another part of that practice, go as far as scripting sections of your software demonstration. Getting back to the analogy of creating a blockbuster movie, the screenplay, the screenwriter, they sweat those details, what words to use and not to use. And then the actors sweat the details of what words they emphasize or don't emphasize. So it's all about practicing this stuff. And the more you practice it, the better you get, the more persuasive and compelling your demos get. And, in the end, the larger the commission checks get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. In your experience, how many SE teams or sales teams practice their demo or their pitch or their discovery meeting?
Fortunately for me and for my firm, Sales Envy, not enough, because it keeps us in business. Sorry, but it's so prevalent and unfortunate, really, that people go into a demonstration winging it. I mean, it's just, you've got to practice, you've got to drill, you've got to rehearse.
Here's the strange thing that I see. If, let's say, you're a basketball player, you're going to play for the NBA. You didn't start practicing after you joined the NBA or right before a game day. You started practicing when you were a child, all through high school, university, and you're still practicing through MBA. Whereas us as salespeople and sales engineers, I didn't even know what a sales engineer was before I joined my company.
Right.
And then I didn't get any practice, didn't get any coaching. I just showed up and started doing the work, and I'm expected to be good at my job. So there's a very big disconnect between the professional life of high achievers who do things and practice on a day-to-day basis, and then engineers and salespeople. They just show up and go do the work. So I find that strange.
And it's a great analogy. I mean, typically, if a sports professional, if the team is not winning games, then management gets them a new coach. But in software sales, if you're not winning deals, you get fired.
Yes.
Why not get your salesperson a coach? It's interesting.
All right, so let's move on to the next step. Solve business, business cases.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty self-explanatory, but do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, absolutely. The key thing is it's how does your software solve the pressing business challenges? And I say pressing because if they're not pressing and important, then you may not make a sale. It's got to be not just a nice to have. But I'm glad you asked about drilling down on it, because I think if there's one takeaway from our entire discussion today, it's this: training versus persuading to purchase. Too often, demonstrations are teaching the person how to use the software. That's supposed to take place after the sale. The demonstration is about persuading people to purchase your software. When people show up to a demonstration, they want to know, why should I buy your software? And you need to answer it, and there's a breakdown. Why? Number one is, how does the software solve my pressing business challenges? Two is, why is it better than any other options that exist? Again, a competitor or staying status quo. Three is it worth it? Like, if we give you a stack of money, are we going to get a stack of money in return? Next is, can I implement it? Like, this all looks good. That's what I mentioned before. See it, like it, want it, can afford it, but, I don't know how we'll implement it. So stop teaching people how your software works and start persuading them to purchase the software.
So what's the difference? Like, how do you persuade someone to buy the software without showing them how it works?
Yeah, and this is a delicate balance, and every software sales professional, whether it's the SE or the account manager side, struggles with this, because prospects get into this. Well, how does it do that? How does it do this? And you have to show them how it works. But where do you draw the line and say, that's a great question, Ramsey. When you own the software and go through training, we're going to teach you that.
Okay.
And the ability to tell a prospect, no, well, that's, the objective of today's demonstration is to determine does our software solve your business challenges? So what I'm showing you now is how it solves the challenges. I'm not teaching you to use it. And like a good example, I would say, because almost all software has some type of reporting. When you're talking about reports, don't tell them how to generate the report or what's on the report. Talk about how they will use the report to solve a business challenge. When you get to your desk in the morning, you're going to look at your dashboard. Here's what it tells you. Today, you don't have this. Tomorrow, when you own our software, you'll have it. You'll be able to make these business decisions that impact your profitability or growth of your company, whatever. So, yeah, it's just when you're practicing, one of the things you want to say or listen to when you're playing back your mock demonstration is, was I teaching them to use the software, or was I persuading them to purchase it?
Okay. I do have one last question about having a better option better than all other options. So, in my experience, if we take any two companies, let's say we take Cisco and Nokia. They have similar products. They do similar things. And then when they go demo, they're pretty much equivalent. They may have Nokia may be better at this and Cisco may be better at that. How does one show that he has the better product than his competitor?
Yeah, such a key question, I'll tell you. Absolutely. That's why we get paid the big bucks, man. It's because we're sales professionals, and you have to do that. Like, it keeps us all awake at night. It drives us crazy. It's like, how the hell did they buy my competitor's software when I'm so much better? So our job is to articulate what's the unique value proposition. Why should you purchase our software compared to others? And to make that differentiation. Now, and that can come in a lot of ways. In some instances, you could sell the bios, the backgrounds of your executive team. You could sell the value of how you prioritize product development. You could sell the value of your user interface. You could sell the value of the implementation process. So you have to pick what your strengths are, and particularly, connect it back, to connect the dots back to discovery. So this loops all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. If you don't execute a quality discovery before a demonstration, then you're setting yourself up to lose. So to me, differentiating when your software and your competitor's software, in essence, can be perceived to do the same thing, to cost about the same, kind of all the same. Now you get out into this price battle. The way to get over that is learn everything you can in discovery. And then when you're demonstrating your software, keep tying it back to what you learned in discovery. Ramsey, when we talked 2 weeks ago, you mentioned that one of the frustrations you have, something that takes you forever at your desk, or an area that really causes issues with customers, whatever it is, tie it back to discovery, paint the picture of their life today, sucks, consequences bad, and their life tomorrow when they own your software, angels singing, life is good, skipping into the office, humming a tune. So anyway,
well,
can you tell I'm a little passionate?
Yes, and for every podcast episode, I usually have the quote of the episode, and this week's quote is based on what you said earlier: "Deals are won or lost in discovery."
Yeah.
So it's already, I've already framed that on my notepad. So that's a very important point. All right.
Good. Well, that's a perfect takeaway.
Yes. If there's one thing we need to learn here, although we're talking a lot about demos, but that's the one takeaway I would say from this thing. All the demo it means nothing if you're showing them the wrong thing. So you mentioned that you wrote a book, how to demonstrate software to win the deal. Is that the name?
So people buy it.
So people buy it. Okay.
How to demonstrate software so people buy it. It's on Amazon.
I will have a link to it in my show notes, which will be at, I think it's show 41, but I'll confirm that at the intro or outro.
Great.
So there will be a link to that. Now, why did you write this book? What drove you to write it?
I'm passionate about it. It needed to be done. Part of it was born out of frustration. I've sat in on so many demonstrations, and I'm glad to say a lot of them were amazing and knocked it out of the park and very good. But I'm sad to say a majority of them were basically a yawn. I call it the companies are out there doing a good B movie, and they're making some sales and they're growing, but man, they could be blockbusters. And that's why I just had to put it all into a book and just capture all the best practices that I've been learning over the years and try to get it into one place that people could read and then leave and apply the principles and all of a sudden see their demo to close ratio improve.
So I haven't read your book yet, but it is on the list of things that it will be on the book club for We the Sales Engineers. Haven't figured out when. But how can one take whatever they read in your book? And the hard part for me is always, how do I apply it in real life? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, and the book is designed that way. So at the end of each chapter, there's an actual what you can do today section. So I tried to distill it down to things you can do immediately, apply in your next demonstration to improve. Because of my own frustration, I'll read books and be like, oh, that sounds great, and then I never get to it. I tried to write this in a manner that let the reader have real key takeaways, things you could do as soon as your next demo to improve it.
Okay, yeah, I'll get that and I'll try it. But this also, you know that I sell both hardware and software, like combos. I don't sell hardware without the software, but there's always mostly hardware involved. Does this apply to folks like me?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the whole book, we talk about software primarily all the way through. Everything can apply to the hardware side as well because they're so interconnected. So absolutely. It would be interesting, and maybe we could have this separate conversation about, what is the distinction if you're selling the hardware side as well as the software. But no, I would say absolutely. For folks that sell kind of the combination like yourself, you'll find it extremely relevant.
All right. That makes me want to read it even more. And we're coming to the end of our. Actually, I haven't asked you the not so fire round. Let me do that then. All right, so this is not so fire round. It's the same questions I ask most of my guests. Sometimes they change. But other than a notebook and a pen, is there an essential tool an SE should be using?
Huh. I love that question. It's a good one. It makes me think.
Thank you.
I would just say this comes back to practice. Take your notebook and your pen and make a list of, if it's a software feature, well, what problems does it solve? We'll list those problems. And practice talking about those business challenges. List the features, but then also list the benefits. Just assume everything you say in a demonstration, the prospect has their arms crossed and saying, "So what? What's in it for them? What's the benefit?" So
I want to add to that. Based on our conversation today, I would say a webcam would be useful just to record yourself doing a demo, a mock demo.
Yes.
And, then you can see yourself. You can see your facial tics. You can see if you put your hand on your mouth when you're talking. I've been using that while doing the podcasts. And, man, is it horrifying to see myself talk. Like, I'm learning a lot and getting better, hopefully.
No, it's so true. And I'm glad you mentioned that, by the way. There's a lot of research that when you're demonstrating software, and because so often nowadays we are demonstrating remotely over the web, turn your camera on. And even if it's just that little square in the bottom right or whatever, now the prospect is hearing and seeing a person, a real person. It has a big impact on the effectiveness of the demonstration from the prospect side because they see you. But to your point, it has a big impact on you yourself because you see yourself. It's the equivalent of looking in a mirror, and it changes everything about your facial expressions and how you speak. So, yeah, there's another takeaway. Turn your cameras on.
Yep. Just be aware that ever since I started doing that, I've been having nightmares. So do it at your own risk. Other than your book, is there a book or resource that every SE should be exposed to?
I think I saw on your website a list of, so there's only a short handful of books about selling software, so to me, we should read them all. Most of them are my friends or colleagues who've written books.
Okay, I'll put a link to that article in the show notes as well.
Yeah. And then, a final thing. At Sales Envy, we tell people just record your demo, send it to us, and let us have a look. We do that complimentary. It's absolutely free. Within a few business days of receiving a recording of your demonstration, you get it back, and it's annotated with our coaching notes. Good job here. Here's what worked well. And, we listen to whatever, minute 10:32 to 11:15, and think about how you may want to say that differently next time. So it's a way that it's really how we go to market. We just take a look at demos, and then we tell prospective clients if our services can add value and make a difference.
So it's sales N as the letter N and V.com. I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. And
Sales N Nancy Victor. Yep.
Yeah, and you have a demo grader tab where people can go in and record their next software or whatever and send it to you. Is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well.
Awesome, thanks.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for actually having that because, no one's ever done that for anybody. Any tips or tricks for time management? That could be an entire other podcast.
Yeah, you did a podcast just recently, the New Year's Eve one, I think it was.
The one right before that, the Christmas one.
Christmas one, that it was kind of goal setting and time management. I think you hit on a lot of key things there. Time management, it's really, it's a whole other subject, but to me it's understanding where you want to be in a year or 2 years or 4 years, and just making sure that every day some of your activities are tied to your long-term goals.
Right, I'll link to that podcast as well. It's funny when the resources you're providing for everybody are like already on my website.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. But here's another key takeaway on time management. I call it sales minutes. Just think in terms of sales minutes. There's only so many sales minutes in a day. And if you do the right thing with your sales minutes, you're going to overachieve your sales goals. So don't be wasting sales minutes.
I think of them as SE minutes because I feel like sales minutes and SE minutes could actually be different because salespeople work in 15-minute chunks, SEs work in like hour chunks.
Oh yeah, yep.
But
I would agree.
I don't know who is it. Is it Elon Musk? I think he schedules his time at 5-minute intervals. So
it could be, yeah.
Anyways, we can learn from those folks as well. Is there an advice you can give an SE that you feel they don't get it from anybody else?
Well, you ask these great questions. They make me stop and think.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of the key takeaway. It's just, let's just think about how is your software solving the business challenge? Like, and then frame your whole talk track, your whole conversation about, Mr. Prospect, you have this business challenge. Here's how our software helps you solve the challenge. But I'll ponder that one some more, and I'll get back to you if I can come up with others for the SE.
Sure. Yep. Happy to have you on whenever you want. So
awesome.
And well, you already answered some of the questions I wanted to ask about sales NV. So we're good there. Is there anywhere people can find you, like Twitter, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is the best place.
Okay. I'll have
and it's just, yep.
I'll have your LinkedIn in the show notes as well.
Yep.
All right.
Excellent.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time, Brian. I enjoyed this, and I appreciate you sticking with me through the technical difficulties, and I'm looking forward to chatting again.
Okay, likewise. I hope your cold gets better.
Me too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Brian, for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. I also want to thank those who reach out to me to let me know that this show or blogs have been helpful. That drives me to keep providing more content to you, so thank you for that. Links to everything we discussed can be found at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show42. I loved having this chat, and the biggest thing I noticed today, it's not something that Brian said, but what he was doing during the conversation. He was trying to tie his examples of what we can do to what I personally sell. And at first he mentioned oscilloscopes, and I said, that's not my department. He actually went back on the site while doing the chat and found my department and started giving examples about what I specifically do. So as SEs, we should be doing something similar, tying our discussions with our customers to something that they can relate to and what they do. It was just fun noticing Brian do that in the middle of a conversation. It's just, it was cool. Thanks again for being here. Sign up to the book club to join the community that we're building here and join the forum, be part of the discussions that will be taking place. Again, to sign up, it is wetheSalesEngineers.com/book club or wetheses/book club. You'll go to the same place. I would love to see you there, sharing information with each other. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.